We have the Fort Bragg Girls High School softball team here. We just had an amazing run in the season and in the playoffs, and we have a proclamation here to recognize them for their accomplishments. I will read the proclamation and then hand it to Coach Orsi and then allow them the opportunity to speak. Proclamation honoring the 2022 champion Fort Bragg High School girls softball team. Whereas the Fort Bragg High School girls softball team went undefeated this year and were declared the 2022 champions of the North Central League 1. And whereas the Fort Bragg girls softball team had a sterling record of 13 wins and 0 losses in league. Whereas the team made it to the North Coast Section playoffs where they took second place, the furthest that Fort Bragg softball team has ever gone. And whereas this is the first league championship for the Fort Bragg girls softball team since 2011. A particularly impressive feat since the league has been expanded to include dominant schools such as Clear Lake, St. Mary's, and Cloverdale. And whereas the championship team holds the record for the most players nominated for all league at 7 players. And whereas the league's most valuable player, Lucy Hendricks, led the league in home runs, triples, stolen bases, and runs. And whereas pitcher Cassidy Baloney led the league in strikeouts and earned run average, pitched 1 perfect game and 2 no-hitters. Whereas the Fort Bragg girls softball team only allowed 18 runs in league in 13 games. And whereas the Fort Bragg City Council wishes to recognize this championship team, its coaches, and its supporters for a truly outstanding season. Now, therefore, I, Benny Norvell, Mayor of the Fort Bragg City, on behalf of the entire City Council, offer congratulations to the teams, coaches, parents, families, and supporters of the Fort Bragg High School girls softball team for a stellar performance during the 2022 softball season.
You ready? I'll keep it short and sweet. I want to thank Mayor Norvell and the City Council for acknowledging our team. It was a lot of fun. The girls, the coaches, the parents. It really is a community thing. It's not just the players itself. So thank you for recognizing us, and we really appreciate it. Hopefully this won't be our last time here. We have a couple good seasons coming up. So again, thank you. And again, congrats to the girls for a great season. Thank you. Next up is our MVP, Lucy Hendricks.
I just want to say thank you for having us. It was a great season. We accomplished a lot. I think a lot of people grew a lot after last season. So that was really cool to see. So thank you.
Anyone else?
They're usually not this bashful. Must be the...
Okay, I'm sure Councilmember Peters would love to say something, so if you could stick around for another minute, perhaps the rest of the council.
Me right now? I certainly would.
Please.
I think one of the things that the coach pointed out was the fact that our local high school teams are representing our community, and not just on the field, but off the field too. And I think you girls accomplished more than just your championship. I think you showed the community what a great group of kids we have at Fort Bragg High School with our softball team. And also, like it was pointed out, it's been a long time since we've had a girls championship team. And I used to sit and watch us get hammered by Cloverdale year after year after year. So congratulations for finally winning league and beating those girls from Cloverdale. And I hope you do continue success here for the next couple of years. That's a great thing about high school in a small town. Typically, the student turnover isn't very much. So keep going and good luck next year too. And we're all very proud of you, our entire community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Impressive record. Well done, guys. I hope you had as much fun doing it as as you're having now, reveling in it. And good luck. Good luck next year. Well done.
I'll just add that someday we hope that field will not have any moles or gophers for you. And it'll be a much more professional field to honor you. So thank you for playing.
Santa Lena and Cloverdale have been really tough teams since I was in high school. And good job for beating them. And I talked to a couple girls on the team and they always said they had fun and a great coach too. Thank you for putting us on the map again, girls.
Okay, I think that's it. Go Wolves.
Thank you.
I hope so. Okay, we have one more that's not on the agenda, and that is, we have a plaque here for outgoing Chief Nolte, which I'd like to present to him this evening. I'm sure most of you know the chief's been with us for about 2.5 years. It's actually been about a 3.5-year process. The relationship that we built, I reached out to John roughly 3.5 years ago and asked him to confide and basically be a confidant to our then city manager to help her with her struggles at the PD. I knew John came with good intentions. We've never had the discussion early on about him being the chief, just him helping Tabitha understand police departments and how the leadership there works. It took about a year to finally get it to happen. Tabitha and John started to speak, and I think that they found that they were both on the same page, both had the same ideas, and they leaned on each other a lot. There were several early morning phone calls, texts between Tabitha, myself, John Nolte, and I think in about that 8 or 9 month period, if this wasn't going to happen, I think I was going to lose my marbles. And I'm not sure between the chief, his wife Carol, my wife, then Tabitha, which one of them was going to have me whacked if this thing did not happen. I think they were all really tired of me at that point. But it worked out for the better. John came in and stepped into a role that most of us felt that he should have had in the first place, but that's not why he took it. He took it because he knew that we needed the support and the help, and he was capable of doing that. I truly believe that this community will never fully understand all the things that Chief Nolte did for us and did for the department. Unless you're on the inside and know what all the issues were, you won't know all the things that he solved. But trust me when I tell you that the 6 months that I promised him it would take to fix it turned into 2.5 years. And I think it goes to show where we were and the time it took to fix it. And I think John gave us his best, and he put us in a really good spot to be able to move forward. And for me personally, it was a lot of weight off my shoulders to have the chief come in and take care of what, our public safety. It's a priority for the city. It's a priority for the state of California. And, we had some issues, and he came in and he took care of us, and he righted the ship. And like I said, he left us in a really good spot to transition. And I'm not sure we could ever fully thank him. I don't think a plaque goes far enough. So if you see him, make sure you tell him, thank you for the 2.5 years that he gave us. John?
I guess you want me to talk, huh?
Please.
Well, I want to thank you for this. It's been a true honor, and I was pretty grateful. But it's not an individual; it's everybody, and including the council. And yeah, the mayor swayed me. It took him a while, but he got me. But it was only because of all you guys and Mayor Whaley and Tabitha and the city staff that made this possible and successful. There was a lot of challenges, and sometimes there was days I was like, why did I do this? But it was everybody working together, and what you guys as the council has done for this city, I recognized, and it was the reason why I took it. And just, I laid the foundation. I've laid a foundation so that now the next guy, which I'm confident, will be able to build off of. I actually just spoke to him before I came to the meeting, and he's pretty excited. And so it's the foundation has been led, and he's going to work on developing the people we have. We have really good people, but they're young. They lack a little bit of experience, but they have the personalities, which is so important to not only the personality to be an officer, but a personality to be work within this community. So we're so much different. And then bringing technology, which we had years ago, and somewhere along the line it got lost as far as computers in the car. And so Mateo's had some great ideas. And so it's been a fulfilling reward to me, to have this position. And it's sometimes you need a break, and maybe I wasn't ready, and everything happens for a reason, and this was the reason. And but I really applaud you guys for the work that you've done, and then recognizing the efforts. But it's not only the staff council, but it's also the police staff that I've had there, and there's some really core people that have assisted me. So thank you all, and I'm glad, and I'll always be a resource. So whether you pay me or not, that's at the end. But yeah, I'm always a resource, for anybody within the community. So thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. It was a joy to work with all of you.
Thank you, Chief.
I just want to point out the heroic effort that this man did on behalf of this community. And I don't think we should go through this plaque award without mentioning the fact that a few years ago in 2019 in March, law enforcement got a call to be on the lookout. Man was armed and dangerous, already committed murder, and was headed for Fort Bragg. John was on the police force that day. He went to the gun cabinet, he took a weapon out, and he went looking for this guy. And when he found him, this criminal had already murdered Ricky Del Fiorentino in cold blood. And John took live ammunition fire from this guy hiding in the bushes and traded fire with him, ultimately ending with the criminal's death in the bushes, saving our community from perhaps other people suffering the same tragedy, and making it so Ricky Del Fiorentino did not die in vain. And I just wanted to mention that tonight, to never forget that he put his life on the line for this community. Very few people do that. This man did. And he's a hero in my mind for the rest of his life for that effort. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to say anything? Vice Mayor.
It's hard to follow that, but I can't let this pass without saying thank you so much for giving us as much time as you did. I know it was much more than you'd hoped, and I'm just so grateful for everything you brought.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Well, you could also thank COVID.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a mistake.
Thank you, Chief Nolte. You're one of a kind. I still have your number. I might need it.
One of the things I noticed was when we first got on council and we had the the police chief before, was not a pleasant place to be in the department there. It just wasn't, the atmosphere was not friendly. People were looking behind their backs all the time, and they were not, and now it's just such a friendly place to be in, and people seem happy. So it's all to you. Thank you.
Well, that's true. And actually, I probably should mention that they kind of threw me a surprise party, and it's very hard to get things past me. But thankfully, somebody upstairs, because I knew something was going on and kind of thought they were not doing their jobs. And so thankfully, I didn't go off and ask what they were doing. But they surprised me. And you're actually right. The atmosphere is totally different. It's a joy to be down there. I was today having a break with them. And so it's exciting. Even the new people, the 3 new people, they're doing such an outstanding job, and we credit to the academy we went to. But it's just a really good, the atmosphere has changed from when I first got in. It was pretty chaotic and very challenging, but it's a whole new set of officers that, we're able to identify and handpick and go through a different process of testing. And, but they're, and the biggest thing that we want is that they work with the council and the community, mostly important the community, because if they don't, they can ruin our reputation basically, and we can lose, community trust. And I have it, or we have it. And I always know we're one incident away from something going bad. So we really strive to have them go out there and do the best they can. And we work on it daily. As a matter of fact, we're working on things today. And so, bring it to their attention. So it is a really good, the whole city, actually, I got to say the whole city. I mean, it was bleak up at City Hall. Now it's thriving with people in friendly places. We're all emailing and talking to each other when we go in there. So it's not just my department, it's all the city departments, and we all work really well together. And we saw that Friday night, and the mayor bushwhacked me again. So it was and it was involved, the fire chief, you guys were involved, everyone. So it was a total surprise and a true honor. And, I guess I kind of measure success when they were able to do that, get it past me, and so it's kind of a good success for me. And then the quality of people, I just can't really, I think, and I know they're going to be taken care of, and they're going to be there for a long time. And that's what's so important, because that really lessens the financial burden of the city. When we are so shorthanded and we have 8 shifts covered by 7 people, it's a burden financially. But when we get these new people, we're going to have, the people are going to be able to take vacation and get their work done, and the great quality work they do now. So it's coming. Dave Spar, it's coming. He can tell me about the overtime, but it's coming. And so you're going to see, and, it's just going to flourish to even more. I mean, we're fortunate in Mendocino County to be fully staffed. One of the few departments, some departments don't even have a chief anymore, and some people barely have enough officers to cover all the shifts, but we're one of the fortunate few. So it's thanks to you guys for listening to me, and the investment that you've placed into these people. So it's you guys deserve a lot of credit. And sometimes, all these other issues in our community get clouded, but you really helped this department grow. Like I said, one person cannot do it. It takes all of us, collaborating to do it together. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you again, Chief. Okay, we're going to move on to regular business. Brings us to item number 2, public comment on non-agenda items. Anybody in the room like to speak on non-agenda?
I'm Cornelia Reynolds, and I am the chairperson of Fort Bragg Bay City USA Committee. A family emergency prevented me at the last minute from attending your June 13th meeting at which you proclaimed Pollinator Week. And so I'm here tonight to thank you for doing that and for continuing to support pollinators. And I'd like to bring you quickly up to date on a number of accomplishments of the community. The pollinator enthusiasts in this town have essentially created what I think you could call a pollinator trail with 5 points of interest, including, of course, the beautiful honeybee mural down the street here downtown. And there are 4 significant plantings of native pollinator plants at the Mendocino Coast Botanical Gardens, at the Garden Friendly Community, South Lincoln Community Garden, at the Bee City Garden here at Guest House Park, and north of the city, north at the Trestle. On the other side of the Trestle on the Hull Road is the Silvergate Native Plant Preserve, which we have developed with the help of McCarraker State Park and the Fort Bragg Garden Club, and together we are maintaining that. If you have not visited it, I think it's underappreciated. Please visit it. There's a beautiful educational sign identifying the value of all the different native plants that are growing there. In the fall, we have plans underway to improve the Bee City Garden here at Guest House Museum, and we will be the committee will be publishing a template entitled How to Start Your Pollinator Garden this fall. It will be designed to explain how to start a pollinator garden and why fall is the best time. So thank you for your continuing support of pollinators.
Okay.
Cornelia, I have that proclamation and we'll figure out how to get it to you. Okay? I don't have it with me tonight. I wish I did.
Yeah, I think I
It's at
can
City
pick it
Hall.
up. I think I can pick it up at City Hall.
You can.
I have other
Yeah.
years.
Okay.
Yeah, I will do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak on non-agenda items? Yes, sir, please.
Good evening, Patrick Hickey, Field Representative with SEIU Local 1021. I'm here tonight to raise some serious concerns regarding the city's classification and compensation study that the City Council commissioned. We received some troubling information that it may not have been conducted in a neutral and balanced way. Let me just read a couple of emails to you. The first one is from Patty Howard, who is an employee with RGS, the company that you're working with. The subject line reads, list of potential comparable agencies for compensation study. I'm not sure what process is for establishing the final list that will be used for the study. Do you need to meet and confer with the unions or discuss this with the city council or class and comp committee? If so, I'll add Arcata to the list and send an updated copy to you. There's a response from the city manager a short time later. Hello, Patty. No, I just decide and make the decision. Thanks. And this was April 12th. About 2 weeks later, after an inquiry as to the origins of the classification and compensation study list, the response from the city manager is, hello, Patrick. Attached is the list of comparable cities selected by our RGS consultant. We actually don't get to select the cities. We provide a list and the consultant selects the comparable or comp list, as you'll see when you open the file. I hope this helps. Both can't be true. As I say, we have serious concerns about whether this is a neutral and balanced compensation study. A committee was established to work on this compensation study. A number of employees were included in that committee, but they were basically blocked from participating in that process. And the information that we were then presented was that the consultant was the one that was selecting the cities when in fact it was the city manager. If you look at the list, 8 of the 9 comparables that were chosen have a much lower cost of living. And I'm not just talking about a little bit, we're talking 10, 15, 20% lower. So these are not comparables. This is a situation where someone has their thumb on the scale and you're getting the answer that you want to get. Right? Fort Bragg, I'm sorry, but Fort Bragg is not Lakeport. To compare us to Lakeport is an insult. We're very different communities. We don't have the same economy. We don't have the same tourism. If we're going to do a compensation study, let's do it right. Let's have a balanced list of comparables, an average so that they have a similar economy as Fort Bragg. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak on non-agenda? please.
Hi, City Council. I'm Valerie, and I just wanted to speak on what Patrick was just talking about. I have a family here, and my husband is a teacher in this community, or in the coastal community, and I really just feel that we need higher pay, and we need to be compensated fairly, especially because we are such a small staff and we do so much for our city. I think that what we're asking is not, it's not unachievable. And I really hope that you take into consideration the fact that we're trying to make a living out here, and I'm trying to start my family. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room?
Hello, City Council. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. My name is Frank Kemper. I work for the city. I'm the lab director. I do the water testing and the wastewater testing. The last time I had to come and talk to the council was about the same thing, about trying to get fair wages for us. Especially in public works, where we do the wastewater and drinking water, we're required to have certificates to be able to do that job. And so when we try to hire to get people to do that job, we can't find anybody that's willing to come here that has the certificates. And why? Well, because they can make more money elsewhere. Because when they come here and take a look at the way is the cost of living here and things of that nature, they realize, well, that wage looks okay on paper until you realize, well, I'm not going to have anything to take home once it's all said and done. And what am I supposed to live on? And so that's why we have a hard time hiring people when we're open for new positions in the wastewater and drinking water all the time. We could use people all the time. We're constantly short-staffed. And when we do get people, they're brand new. That takes 2 years for somebody to get up to speed for those certificates. So they're there, but they can't be 100% there. They're doing the work, but they can't be relied on when the other guys have to leave. They can't be alone. So if we continue down this path, and the county's seen the same thing. You play that game, if you try to just barely give enough to keep people satisfied, well, you don't get any new people coming in, and you get people leaving that have certificates that can make a lot more inland, but they want to stay here. Why do they want to stay here? Because we love this town. This town is great. We enjoy being here. We want to stay here. But when we're talking about 3% versus 5%, we're talking about 2% difference. You're just about to create a new position called Assistant City Manager. That's $120,000 a year position. Another management position? Really? Do we need another management position? When you're not willing to give the employees that actually do the work, boots on the ground, another 2%, but you're willing to create another management position at $120,000. And you just increased the city manager's pay recently, probably because you couldn't get a candidate to come at the lower wage. So I just don't understand where your priorities are. If you want to pay management really well, that's great, but the boots on the ground are not enjoying it. So 2% just doesn't seem like it's worth it for us to be getting all upset about this stuff. It's just silly. It's just silly. When the numbers say that you have it, I don't understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Alexia Fraser. I want to start off saying I love working for the city. I came to the city because I am the main breadwinner for my family. I chose this position over other positions, not just because of how much you guys will pay, but because how much you care and the other benefits. But when we do see us getting passed over and the conversations aren't very transparent about our COLAs, it does feel like a slap in the face. It feels like you guys are trying to pull one over on us. And we don't want that I can speak for all of my coworkers that we do love working here. We all want to be part of a team. And like what has been said, it's 2%. We're not asking for much. We're barely even asking for another person's yearly salary. And we would like to have this conversation and not just be told what it is. So thank you guys. Again, I love working for the city, love working with you all. Let's continue this discussion and work as a team. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? No? Oh, one more, please.
Good evening, council. Thank you for your time. I just wanted to share that I agree with everything my coworkers shared, but I also wanted to share an observation. Having the experience from two other larger agencies, it's very admirable what everybody does here. I mean, everybody does 4 or 5 different roles. It's amazing. So I just thought I'd reiterate that. I know you guys have praised us and acknowledged and thanked us all, but I think if you could find it in your hearts to consider this small raise, cost of living raise, I think we'd all very much appreciate it and would feel maybe a bit valued. And hopefully, as I mentioned, it'll also help improve the staff morale at City Hall. I actually work for Public Works, but I'm also speaking on behalf of City Hall staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Merle Larson. I've worked for the city for 18 years now. And this year is kind of unprecedented in what's happening in our economy. Inflation is now 9%. If you're not sure about it, go down the rabbit hole, check it out. It's 9%. It will increase next year a little bit. With 9%, over the next 3 years, if we can't make 5 or 4% and a 3 and a 2 and maybe one more negotiated last year on the third year for maybe 1 more percent, that would cover just this year. And if you don't give that to us, it's not us that you're penalizing. Okay, I don't make the money, but I could do side jobs, and some of these other guys can too, a little bit to get by, but we shouldn't have to. What you're doing is everywhere that I shop downtown, they're not going to get the money. You're not penalizing me. I'm going to go online. I'm going to go over the hill. I'm going wherever it's cheaper to buy something. So you know what that means here? Less tax dollars. Less for you when you make that decision to say, you know what? That's too much for these guys. Because the money that we don't spend here, it's going to come back to you. It's going to affect the city. And when that happens, then pretty soon you're going to be with a lot less road repair, a lot less special projects that we're doing all the time, a lot of other things that are happening around the city. Maybe the schools aren't going to benefit so much because we give a lot. Take the kids on places, just like the school team you just gave an award to. We do a lot behind the scenes to keep these kids going. With a little bit less in our check and the inflation this year a little bit more, that means a little bit less. Thank you. Better make the right decision because whatever you do is going to affect us for the next 3 years.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, we will move on to public comment on the consent calendar. Anyone in the room?
Hi, this is Jacob Patterson. I want to comment on 5D, which is our routine telephonic emergency declaration about why it's too dangerous to have meetings in person, and point out that we're not really, like if you actually read the language, we're not following it. We're all here right now. We're having a meeting in person. We're using Zoom, but we're still forcing people who want to make public comments to come here in person, and not everyone can. I have several friends that are immunocompromised who can't safely get vaccinated and come to the meetings, and it's not been easy for them to participate, and I we just had additional deaths this weekend. And this is a serious issue, and I really want to encourage the council to restore hybrid public comment options. I really see no excuse for not doing so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak on the consent calendar?
We have a hand raised from an ADA accommodation person online.
Sure, please.
Jen Shattuck. Okay, it says, allowed to talk is not available because Jen Shattuck is using an older version of Zoom. So I can promote her to a panelist so she can speak if you want.
Please.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I thought I downloaded the right one this time. You can hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm glad Jacob said something. I can do an ADA request. Sometimes it's not easy to do it, but people should be allowed to join by Zoom. People do it at all the other meetings. And the council meeting is probably the most important. You allow it at your committee meetings, but not the council meetings for the general public. And when you read your declaration that you pass or your ordinance thing every month, it gives the reasons for allowing telephonic or Zoom meetings. So I would just encourage you to put it back the way it was. So unless you're discouraging public participation, I don't know what the other reason for that would be. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak on consent? Okay, public comment on closed session items. Nope, seeing none. Madam Clerk, do you have a hand raised?
No, sir.
Okay, so we will move on to staff comments. Mr. Spar, I believe you have something to read.
I do, Mayor, thank you. I want to comment on 5G, moving a position from assistant to city manager to the position of assistant city manager. And to do that, there is a Brown Act disclosure with an oral summary. And I'd like to read that. The proposed change in this item 5G authorizes an annual salary for the position of assistant city manager up to the amount of $120,972.80. There will be some salary savings from not having a city manager for a period of time, as this week will be my last week. So thank you very much for that. And that concludes my comments on item 5G.
Okay, and then Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to share my screen for just a moment. Let me see. There we go. The city has included a new video on how to run for city council on the city's website. If you go to city.fortbragg.com, scroll down to the spotlight, and you'll see here the election 2022. By clicking on read more, you can watch approximately 5-minute video on how to run for a seat on the Fort Bragg City Council. And although you can't hold nomination papers until next month, you can learn about some of the frequently asked questions and the procedure for becoming a city council nominee on the November 8th, 2022 ballot. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe there are no more staff reports, correct? Mr. Whippy, none?
Mr. Whippy will talk about the budget when we get to time to adopt the budget.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to matters from council members. We'll start at this end this time. Vice Mayor?
Sure. Boy, we've already had a lot tonight. I was wondering if we could get a little update on the compensation rate study, just if not now in our next meeting. I mean, if you're comfortable giving it now, that would be really great to kind of, okay, thank you.
Yeah, the
comp study's been a little frustrating because the consultant's been slow in pulling information. I've asked Patty Howard to include all cities suggested by staff members, committee members. I haven't excluded anything unless it is a population of 50,000 or larger that's not. And I didn't want to be picking cities that might be less or more in compensation. I would actually like to have the most competitive cities possible. The comp study was supposed to be completed by the end of June. They had difficulty. The cities are very busy doing their budgets, and so they haven't been assigning staff to pull the information. They want the consultants to pull the information off the website, or they want our staff to pull the information off the website. I've not been allowing our staff to do the consultant's work. I've been pushing the consultant to do the work rather than us do the work. Right now, what we have is some base salaries, but not all equal positions have been cataloged and categorized and provided to us. Only those that were simple and easy for the consultant to do. And she's pulled those. They're fairly competitive, but not fully competitive because we're still missing a lot of positions. The principal issue with the comp study or comparable study is having our position descriptions be equal to and comparable to the other cities' position descriptions. So we're not looking at apples and apples, we're looking at apples and oranges, and it's making it more difficult for their team to do that analysis. When do I expect it to be completed? My hope as soon as possible, but I would suspect it could be July or August before you have a study that you can really compare our staff positions, our salary and wages, and our benefits comparable to other like cities.
Thank you. Okay, and then I did want to make a comment that the hybrid format for these meetings, while it seems like it wouldn't be any additional work, requires an additional body in the room. And that might seem like small potatoes, but it is a big deal getting an extra staff person to service a meeting. So while I hear the request and I think it absolutely merits discussion, I do want to acknowledge that it is more complicated and expensive than acknowledged by the public. And I feel like there's just so much going on. I don't even know where to start, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Councilmember Alvin Smith.
First of all, I attended a virtual conference with multiple cities, legal cities. I'm representing the Coastal Cities Group, the leadership group. And Wade Crowfoot, who's Secretary of Resources, was discussing the state of emergency with water and how communities are dealing with that. And there was a lot of back and forth ideas shared. Something I didn't know is that the State Water Resources Control Board has made it illegal to water your lawn. And I don't know how many people know that. So I'm not sure how that affects us, except that we do all have lawns, but that our water is dependent on the level of the rivers, and the level of the rivers don't care if we water our lawn when they're high. It still just goes out to the ocean. So it's not like we have a supply of water that we're watering our lawns from. So that's a different issue, but it's still illegal. I'm wondering where we're at with that in terms of water rationing. We haven't even talked about it. John's not here and it's not on the agenda, but it would seem that we should start thinking about this pretty soon because we're now into summer. So I'm just bringing that up. The other thing, I've been busy with various things. So Symphony of the Redwoods just performed this week, and it's the first time in 3 years. But what I've been told is that it's very difficult now to find a performing arts place. The schools are shutting down or making it really hard to rent Cotton Auditorium, of all things. And I'm not sure how the city can get involved in discussions of the schools. There's going to be a new superintendent. I'm not, it floors me that was developed as a performing arts theater with a lot of grant money, and now it's difficult to use it. We just lost Eagles Hall that Gloriana was renting from the Eagles. Eagles wanted to get rid of it. They put it up for auction. Gloriana got some backers enough to make the bid at the asking price, but somebody overbid them, and now I'm told that it's in escrow. So it's another performing arts place or a good meeting place that we might have needed for maybe the blue economy next year. And then something, we don't own it, but the Botanical Gardens making it hard to do outdoor concerts. They don't like music. I don't understand, it was a wonderful thing. So I'm just making that known publicly, that if you know somebody and you can discuss it, we can start getting a conversation going. And the other thing is fields. So our softball team was just here, and I made a comment about the condition of the fields, which hasn't improved at all since we formed our field improvement committee, since AAAB tax was approved. Nothing's happened. I understand during COVID, all the discussions broke down when we were trying to discuss how to manage the fields, how we can go get grants. But here's the thing, I just, Jessica and I attended a policymakers conference in the spring, and discussed there were a lot of side discussions about what is your community doing. And I had a discussion with the mayor of Monterey. This is a big city, and they didn't have any fields until they partnered with the schools. And so there was a shared expense for maintenance, and then all those city schools, as ours do, are the city parks. Those are the only parks they had. Those are the only parks we have other than Bainbridge, for playing ball, for throwing a frisbee, for having a picnic. Other than Bainbridge, we all use the schools as our park. So I want to put out there that, my latest push now will be for the city to maybe partner with the schools. And Tabitha was always saying, well, if we owned the fields, it would make more sense to her to be our park. So now I've been thinking about that, and it's like, well, maybe we should co-own it. I know the schools can't afford to maintain them to the level they're being used. So maybe if we fix these fields, we can bring more economy back to our city in terms of sports, any sports, softball, baseball, anything, just having nice fields is where it's at. So that's my 2 cents, and I'm done.
I believe the city, along with the rec district, commissioned a study, and the results of that study on how to improve the fields are there. I guess it's just we don't have the money. I agree with you. The fields would be great to get them back into shape. A couple of things. I lost a pretty close friend last night. Bernie, is it okay if I acknowledge her?
Please.
Maybe folks don't know, but the family's been notified. Recent planning commissioner appointee Sharon Davis passed away last night. I don't have any more information. I'm not sure it has been confirmed. She was such a joy and delight to work with as the representative for the Chamber of Commerce. She almost single-handedly carried on the sister city relationship with Osuchi and our student exchange program. And of course, she just was appointed as a planning commissioner. And I don't know if a moment of silence is appropriate, but it hit me pretty hard when I realized that it really happened. So I would just like to take a moment, and we all know or got to know Sharon, and all have good thoughts about her. So in this moment of silence, think of that smile, how she'd throw her head back and laugh. And just honor her presence in our community. It feels to me like a flame has extinguished in our small community. So if you could just join me, if that's okay, for a moment of silence for Sharon Davis, a true champion for the city of Fort Bragg. Thank you, and thank you, Mayor. A couple other things. I wanted to mention it's on the consent calendar, but the traffic study, if we all read it, there was a mention of how many broadside accidents in this town. And it just seems to me if we could just get people to stop at a four-way stop sign, they just want to roll through. And I know Joseph Shaw, Sergeant Shaw's been working on this, and it just seems to me people are not paying attention to the rules of the road here. And we're just so polite, and we're such a great community and friendly and everything. I wish we could transcend that behind the wheel sometimes. Anyway. And then I just want everyone to know too here that might be in the room that I did not participate in any of the discussions in terms of the employee negotiations, nor will I participate in 5G. Just to let you know ahead of time, I'm going to have that removed so that I am not able to vote on that. And other than that, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and well done. Thank you for that. Councilmember Raffinen?
I don't have anything. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, and thank you again, Councilmember Peters, for the kind words for Ms. Davis.
And thank you for the time, Bernie, because I didn't clear it with you. Thank you.
Okay, a couple things for me. First of all, as far as the schools and the fields go, I agree with Tess. They need to be fixed. But the schools do own them at this point. I think if we're going to take them on, we're going to have to come up with a revenue generator to pay for them. You're looking at 1.5, 2 full-time employees just to take care of them. So before we even explore something like that, I would like to see us, somebody, come up with a way to generate some revenue to pay for those employees. And I think, not to be argumentative, but I think a lot has happened with the fields. Again, the schools own them, and we've given them everything that they've asked for to maintain the fields, including item on tonight's consent calendar, things that I've worked out with the district over the last 2. So there is communication there. I make sure that whenever the budget comes around, that if there's anything that they need, all they have to do is ask, and that's why these things end up on the consent calendar. Lastly, talking about the tax initiative that we've discussed in the past. I think somebody put it to me very politically correct the other day that the county has made a big loud mess of a tax initiative currently. I think they've agreed on what they want to increase it to, which will keep the tax rate the same. But I think considering everything, including the economy where we are and the negotiations, I'm just not convinced that right now is the time to add to the tax in the city. I know we've got some ideas for general tax and using it for our community land trust and some other things, but I just don't think that the support is there in the community for a tax. But we all, if there's a majority of it here that wants to do it, it needs to happen. The city clerk has expressed to me twice in the last few weeks that we are absolutely running out of time. And if this is something that you all would like to do, it needs to happen fast. We don't want to rush it and get to the end. We tried before, we were close, but it didn't make it. And I'm just personally, I don't think right now with the backlash the county has gotten for a general tax that it's in our best interest to pursue that. And that's all I have. Yes.
Could we agendize a conversation about that?
Absolutely. I'm not sure where it ended up with the committee, finance and admin. Okay. Dave,
Has that conversation moved forward?
has it not
It's
been
not
discussed?
started?
It's not been discussed.
So I can add a little light to that subject. We did receive the language today on the 3/8 cents tax initiative. So it's near final and ready to go to Finance and Admin Committee, and then to bring it to City Council for approval to add to the November ballot. It's much easier to strike an item from the November ballot than it is to add it on because you have deadlines. So from a staff perspective, we would recommend that you add it, test the waters, see how the county does, and see how the city appetite for our local residents would be for a 3/8 cents. And then if you feel it is not the right time, then you can have it removed from the ballot or not have the ballot printed with that on there. But we have hired a consultant. The consultant has completed the language, and now we need to have you or a committee vote on that and approve it, the city council, and then we send it to the state agency that actually reviews and tests the language to be legal and representative.
So then we do expect it to come to Finance and Admin.
Yes, it's ready to be agendized.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That, okay. Brings us to consent calendar. Councilmember Peters.
I think most folks know my wife Sarah is a recent employee of the city of Fort Bragg, and therefore I am going to remove or recuse myself from item 5G.
Okay, so you want to pull that for a vote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything on the consent? No, seeing none. Okay, we will entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar minus 5G.
I so move.
Second?
Madam Clerk, if you could take a roll, please.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Morsel Hay,
Yes.
Heffernan,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes. Okay, and we'll come back to 5G. Councilmember Peters wanted this pulled for a vote so he can recuse himself, and I believe he stated clearly why.
Right, and I don't need to leave the room. I think I can just sit here for this. So
Okay.
if there is some discussion, there might be.
Is there any discussion on 5G before we open it up to the public? No? Madam Clerk, if you can open up 5G to the public, please.
Yes, if you'd like to speak on 5G, please come up to the microphone. If you're online, please raise your hand. Mr. Mayor and no one.
Okay. I will make a motion to accept 5G as presented.
Second?
Madam Clerk, if you could take roll, please.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Morsel Hay,
Yes.
Heffernan,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Disclosure of ex parte communications on agenda items. Anybody have anything they need to divulge? Nope, seeing none. Okay, we have no public hearing tonight. Brings us conduct of business. 8A, receive, report, and consider adoption of resolutions approving fiscal year 2022, 2023 City of Fort Bragg and Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District Number 1 budgets, establishing fiscal year 2022, 23 appropriations limit, and approving fiscal year 2022, 23 capital project budget. And we will need 4 different motions, one for each resolution this evening, if we so choose. And I believe this is Mr. Whippy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members. Our budget adoption for fiscal year 22-23. In your packet, we've put together a budgeting brief summarizing the 200-page document for the average user. Just wanted to start off with the budget process. So July to February, we gather feedback from committee meetings and council meetings. In February, during the midterm budget workshop, we obtained the council goals in building the budget and set the forecast for the current fiscal year. April to May, department heads developed a budget based on those council goals. And then our budget hearing, which we conducted in May with feedback from the public for your review. And here we are with budget adoption prior to the start of the new fiscal year. So the council goals for developing this budget consist of 6 goals, which we've built into the budget. First and foremost was to adopt a balanced budget. So the general fund and all the funds in the budget are balanced. We've maintained the current level of service, maintain operating reserves and litigation reserves. The operating reserves are based on 15% of operating expenditures. And then provide funding for emergency reserves. This is our recession reserves. It's set at 5% of operating expenditures, and that's built into the budget as well. Provide cost of living for staff. We've put together 3% cost of living that's already built in here. And then finally, providing additional contributions to pay down our unfunded liability. So we're going to begin with the all funds level. So looking at 35.1 million of city revenues. The presentation tonight would be based just on the highlights of the budget. We've gone into detail during the budget hearing, and as I mentioned with the budget in brief, but 39% of revenues from intergovernmental, that includes our grants. We have an aggressive grants program where a lot of that is earmarked for capital improvement. 22% of revenues of 7.8 million are for charges for services. That includes water, wastewater, CV Star. The sales tax, which is 13% of 4.5 million, with 0.5% for the CV Star and 1% for the city. TOT at 3.4 million. We've plugged in a modest projection of 1.4%, trying to see if those TOT numbers are sustainable as we go into the first or second quarter of the next fiscal year. In terms of expenditures, 37.7 million citywide expenditures. Water at 25% or 9.3 million. A lot of that has to do with grants that the water enterprise has received, particularly for the rural water line, which will be split up between 22-23 and 23-24. Community development, 18%, that accounts for CDBG grants, which is included in there. Public safety at 5.6 million, that includes the fire and our police department. Public Works, 5.4 million, or 15%. General government is at 8. That includes the city attorney, administration, finance, and HR. So taking a look at the general fund budget, 11.1 million is the projected revenue for next fiscal year. The total taxes, 7.5 million, with a 2% increase. We've been very modest, as I mentioned previously, just seeing how TOT would record in the first 2 quarters. Fuel prices would impact some of the travel, and we've already seen that with occupancy rates declining by 10%. However, room rates are still at an all-time high here locally. Sales tax, a 4% increase, particularly due to inflation. We've also haven't seen impacts to consumer spending habits, and this is a projection that our sales tax consultants has provided. And then again, total general revenues, 11.1 million. For expenditures, 10.9 million, a 5% increase across the board. As I mentioned previously, with a 3% cost of living adjustment has been built in there. We've budgeted for a full-time chief of police position, together with a city manager. We have an engineering tech built into the public works budget. and a assistant planner for community development. The general fund debt, if you see that in the middle, I apologize if it's too small to read. That 687,000 is our first our first payment for the lease revenue bonds, which we acquired in November 2021. As a reminder, the council had approved returning that 3.5 million. So we're working with the consultants to pay down that and kind of smooth out the annual payments in the future. But as it stands, this debt payment here includes the full payment of that debt. So again, 10.9 million is the general fund expenditures. Overall, we're looking at a surplus of 175,000, and again, that's taking into account the revenue for the upcoming fiscal year, inflation and recession aside. So the general fund balance, we saw a dip, and I've talked about this a number of times. In 1920 with COVID, we rebuilt that with a $1.5 million surplus in 2021. We've rehired staff. Revenues have recorded strong performances, resulting in a $4.1 million general fund balance there for 2021. This year at 3.4 million. That dip is because of 50% of surpluses are earmarked for paying down our pension UAL, which we will hear later on this evening. So the projected fund balance is 3.6 million for 22-23. This are the city reserves. So total reserves are 3.6 million. We have 547 in our recession reserve, in operating reserve at 2.2, which is 15% of operating expenditures, 200,000 for litigation reserve, and 684,000 is unassigned, which is an accumulated of all surplus balances that have accumulated in previous years. The trust, 4.5 million, that OPEB trust we set up in 2012. We've contributed about 200 to 300,000 each year, and we suspended that in 18-19 in order to balance the budget as we've accumulated enough funds in there to be able to draw to pay for retiree medical costs. So again, 3.4 million is in our OPEB trust, and then that's the Section 115 trust with 1.1 million earmarked if approved tonight. This table is not new. I've shown this before, the 5-year forecast with the likely recession in 23-24. As a rule of thumb, recession usually occurs when there's a decline in GDP for 2 straight quarters. Bloomberg economist says that there's close to a 3 in 4 probability there'll be a recession by the start of 2024. Economists at Deutsche Bank, one of the first major banks actually to forecast a recession, now expects one in mid-2023, and Wells Fargo also predicts the same. So the likelihood of a recession could climb even higher if gasoline prices continue to rise, and if the Fed opt for a 75 basis points rate hike in July, this could have impacts. It's worth noting that as hard as it to forecast when a recession would happen, also it's even harder envisioning what one would look like. So this is just a snapshot in talks with our consultant from Muni Services. We could see a decline in our tax revenues, particularly sales tax, by 10 to 15%, and similarly for TOT taxes. So if a recession would happen in 23-24, we would see a decline in fund balance by 510,000, and in 24-25 would be the slow recovery from that recession ending numbers. And then in 25-26 through 27 would be a modest 2 to 3% growth.
Excuse me, could you pause 1 second? We had one council member walk out. We'll allow her to come back. Thank you.
Yeah, but she's getting a glass of water for us. A little tickle in my throat.
Okay.
That's okay. Thank you very much. I don't want to cough and everyone think I was sick or something.
Thank you, Bernie. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Whipper. Please continue.
So on this slide is just, the graphic illustration of the previous table. In 24-25, we'd see a dip in fund balance if the recession were to happen, and then again, slowly recovering. Importantly, is also CalPERS. They, as of May, they were at a negative 8% rate of return on their investments. They are predicting that it could end up between 5 to 8%. So that does impact our general fund operating budget. And it's frustrating as we've issued these revenue bonds and restructured the debt. But whenever CalPERS has a bad year, which recently they have had many bad years, we would see those impacts in our normal costs for unfunded liability. So that just to keep at the back of our minds. And then looking at enterprise reserves, our water, wastewater, and CV Star. We're currently finalizing the rate study. We'll be bringing that forward to the Finance and Admin Committee before the full council. So that's coming up. The operating expenditures are $2.8 million for water, $2.1 million for wastewater, and CV Star 2.5. That graph illustrates the reserves in the 2.1 for capital reserves for water. That has been depleted because of the aggressive capital improvement programs that's scheduled for water, which we will see later on in the presentation. So capital improvement program, $21.3 million. An aggressive CIP will be busy in the next couple of years, the next 2 years. Municipal facilities, $334,000 that consists of the fire station rehab, the design piece, which is funded by CDBG, with the town hall bathrooms for $130,000 and the courtyard for $50,000. Parks, a little over $1 million. This is for the 2 soccer fields at Bainbridge for $330,000 and $697,000 for Wiggly Giggly improvements to the park. We've identified $200,000 already from our facilities. The rest is still unidentified funding, and staff will go out and look for grants to fund the rest of the project. Water, $15.5 million, $8.3 million is dedicated to raw water line engineering, which will take place the next fiscal year. $1 million for water tank installation. We have the water meter replacement project that's currently underway. We hope to finish that in October. And then $1 million for emergency power infrastructure improvements. For the sewer fund, $2.8 million. That includes $750,000 for collection system rehab, Pudding Creek sewer main relocation of $225,000. And then a dryer building reconstruction for $170,000. So the funding source for CIP, as shown on the graph, most of it is from grants, about 46% or $9.9 million. This is from the State Water Resource Control Board, CDBG. John and his team has been outstanding in looking for grants to fund the CIP projects. Water Enterprise will contribute about $3.3 million as matching funds and to pay for some of the other capital improvement projects as well. $955,000 from our wastewater enterprise, and we have 21% that's still unidentified. We've submitted grant applications for these, but they still remain under the unidentified column until the grants has been awarded. And that concludes the report. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Council, any questions for Mr. Whippy? Vice Mayor, please.
thinking about the last time we heard a report on the TOT taxes and the fact that I believe we're in our third month of decline in TOT tax income, is that a fair statement?
Second
Second,
quarter.
okay.
Actually, you're right. So the first 3 months of 2022, Jan through March, we did see declines in occupancy rates as compared to the prior year by 10%.
So with that in consideration, do you feel like our projections for revenue still stand?
Yes, at this time, yes, we are gonna revisit that in Q1. We'll be closely monitoring our revenue levels. But at this time, as I mentioned, we've been modest about that 1%. And the reason is, from July through December last year, strong revenue numbers, they even beat prior year. And we want to see how the next couple of months will be. I think at midterm budget, we'll have a better idea next year. But the fuel prices could come down and we could see increase in travel. So it's just a lot of unknowns at this time, but we believe the 1% is safe. And again, we'll be closely monitoring it.
Okay, and just to clarify, you mentioned that if and when the recession hits, we're expecting to see about a $510,000 decline in revenue. But am I correct in my understanding that would be projected for the 23-24 fiscal year versus the 22-23?
That's correct.
Okay.
So leading economists have predicted that that's the year that the recession could happen, but it could be next year. We have our recession reserve of 550,000, but it is quite concerning because how long that would last. But our projections are revenue numbers to decline by 15%, and expenditures continue to increase because of inflation and personnel costs.
Okay. So you do feel like it is conservative enough?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Ruffin, did you have your hand up? No. No other questions? All right. We'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the room? Please.
Hi, this is Jacob Patterson again. I learned that from some of the people who work at the city that the difference between a 3% cost of living adjustment and a 5% is only $42,000. And I would recommend that you amend the budget that's proposed tonight to include the 5% COLA adjustment. It's only $42,000. There are several places you could take it from if you do want to do a reduction. One of the places I would first consider is the budget we use for the IDEA Cooperative. As Jessica just mentioned, despite everything they're doing, and this is something some of us have said from the beginning, I don't necessarily think there's a connection between their efforts and TOT revenue. I think it was coincidental, as evidenced by the fact that they've been doing their best, most thorough work, and our TOT went down anyway. We spend $15,000 a month on them, is my understanding, and that's what the budget is. That is an easy place to cut something. It's the cost of like one vehicle. And if we end up with a recession, we can deal with that at that point. But I don't see any reason to alienate the staff. And some of the people who might be listening might be surprised to hear me be the one saying this, since I am frequently criticizing work that comes from some of our city staff. But I don't think that is relevant. We have people that are working hard. It's difficult in our economic conditions. And I'm not sure that our recruiting is really tied necessarily to the salaries we have. Our housing issues are important, and also the city doesn't have the best reputation. But my other concern is that the salary survey everyone keeps talking about is only comparing us to other cities. And I don't know why those aren't real comparables in my opinion. The honest truth is our non-police staff don't really have a lot of negotiating leverage because there aren't a lot of other employers here that they could transfer their jobs to. So they would have to leave the community, and I don't think a lot of them would. But that's no reason for us to abuse that authority and shortchange them. And we are spending so much money on so many different things that it would be easy to tighten our belt by a measly $40-some thousand, in my opinion. I would recommend you do that tonight. And then if we have to adjust later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No, no more public comment. Back to council. Were you trying to say something? No? Okay. Anybody have any more questions for Mr. Whoopi? Or any discussion on the budget?
Other than the fact that, this isn't our first look at this budget. We've been working and we've been giving direction and we've been working and we've been giving direction. And this is, it's June 27th and July 1st, the new fiscal year starts. So here's the product. And I don't see anything, obviously I didn't take part in the discussion that was just referred to by our last commenter. I'm still going to vote on the budget because it's a big document, and that just because that's in there doesn't mean I can't vote on it. But I've watched us work through this. We had a full day budget workshop. There are a lot of unknowns. Depends what periodical you read. You read the Wall Street Journal, they're telling you one thing about a recession. You read a different, Bloomberg, there's something else. And so it's kind of scary for us. Note that we have not had a planning director for some time. That number is in the budget, and the new police chief number is in the budget, and city manager. So those are three high-paid positions that are going to require some funding. And overall, I think Isaac's done a really good job. He's taken our direction. He's pared it down, and we got assurance, thanks to a nice question from the vice mayor, that our conservative direction to putting these numbers together, because it's all projections. You don't know. You're projecting, and maybe the public doesn't understand that. And as things go south and you projected more revenue coming in than there is, that's when we really get into tight situations, trying to figure out how to, save money here and spend money here and make the city still work efficiently and make our employees happy as well. So my only comment is I'm ready to move forward, and I think we've done there might be a lot more discussion, I don't know, but I appreciate the work that Isaac's done, and I'm happy with the budget as it's been presented tonight. So thank you, Isaac.
Okay, thank you for that. Alvin Smith, please.
Thank you for those comments. You took the words right out of my mouth. So very well put. So thanks, Isaac, for your hard work. As I said, when the pandemic first happened, you have to plan for the worst and then you can back off. And we have every indication that there's going to be a huge recession coming. And if it doesn't, and we do well, then we give back. And that's what we did before. So I would love to plan for the worst and hope that it doesn't happen. And just be conservative so we don't ever have to worry about it. And that's why I think that this is a reasonable budget at this point.
So it's a bit awkward since we're still in negotiations. A big topic tonight has been employee COLA and the negotiations, and we're still in negotiations, and we're trying to approve a budget without our final information. So we just, if anything changes, we amend it down the line, right? I'm sorry, I was distracted by picketers when we discussed this before.
Dave Spark, interim city manager. If you adopt this budget tonight, does not mean that in July, if we conclude negotiations with SEIU, and then we open the management and the two groups and discuss with them and come up with a final, that we could come back and you could amend the budget accordingly to accommodate that. So staff is here to receive city council direction on the budget.
And just to add to that, the budget amendment, if we do decide to amend the COLA, it'll be retroactive for employees. So going back to July 1, but in order to move forward to the next fiscal year, we need to adopt the budget and amend it as we conclude the negotiations. Yeah.
Okay, so adopting this budget we can do so acknowledging that things are still changing on that. Okay. All right.
That is correct, Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Raffinen?
No, Vice Mayor, she covered it, and City Manager Dave. Thank you.
Okay, and I would agree, and I would also like to say that I think 2016, my first year, was the last year that this council adopted a deficit budget, and that was always kind of the plan. And this council has taken a more conservative approach, a more realistic approach, and has made it a focus to balance the budget. I think it's financially irresponsible to adopt a deficit budget. Budgets aren't always the easiest thing, and they get presented to us for approval, but it's staff that puts them together, follows our direction. Mr. Whippy, you and your team has done an amazing job. Mr. Spar, thank you very much. You don't have to look very far out into the community to see organizations struggle with their budgets. We have it right here in town. Getting your budgets reported out and on time and with pertinent information. So to have this here in front of us the way it is presented and in line with council direction is very much appreciated. So thank you again to your staff. And a reminder to council, we need 4 different motions, 4 different votes tonight for attachments 2 through 5.
And should we do them in order, do the first 2 and then the municipal improvement district resolutions, the last 2? Is that understanding that correct? If there is no more discussion, I'm prepared to make the first motion on the resolution before us.
Please.
Okay. I move we adopt the Fort Bragg City Council resolution approving and adopting the annual appropriations limit for fiscal year 2022-23.
Second.
Madam Clerk, you have a first and a second. If you take roll, please.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Raffinen,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes. And to keep things fluid, if council wouldn't mind, Mr. Peters, if you would continue,
I'll
please.
keep rolling.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to make a motion that we adopt the Fort Bragg City Council resolution approving the fiscal year 2022-23 City of Fort Bragg budget.
Second.
First and a second, Madam Clerk, if you take roll, please.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Raffinen,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion we adopt a resolution for the Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District Number 1, resolution approving the fiscal year 2022-23 Municipal Improvement District Number 1 budget.
Second.
Madam Clerk, again, a first and a second, if you take roll, please.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Raffinen,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes.
And if anyone else wants to jump in, they can. If not, I'll make a motion.
Go for it.
Okay, I'll make a motion, joint Fort Bragg City Council and Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District Number 1, a resolution approving the fiscal year 2022-23 capital projects budget.
Second.
Madam Clerk, last time, first and a second, if you take roll, please.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Raffinen,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Mr. Peters, very much for that. Madam Clerk, are you satisfied there?
Yes, we have all resolutions moved, seconded, and unanimously adopted.
All right, we will move on then to item 8B. Receive report, provide direction to staff regarding extending the June 30th, 2022 cutoff date for water turnoffs for balances over $2,000. And again, I believe this is Mr. Whippy.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So this item, just for some background, the governor moratorium on water turnoffs expired December 31st, 2021. We took this forward to the Finance and Admin Committee about resuming shutoffs effective April because we're required to give customers a 60-day notice. We brought that forward to the committee. The committee recommended to the full council in March for resumption of the water turnoffs. Council agreed with staff recommendation to shut off water for accounts that are over $2,000. So it would give low-income customers rather to apply for the LEWAP grant, which is the California Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program. Unfortunately, that grant has hasn't rolled out as fast as we had hoped. We reached out to the agency and the response is any day now. So our recommendation, anyway, the stats there on the screen is just the amount of past due dollars that are due from our customers, with 53% over 120 days, or 74 accounts, a total of 131 accounts, which just makes up about 4% rather of our total customer base. Our recommendation is to move the due date, which you had set for June 30th to August 30th, to give customers more time once the grant rolls out. And there's no fiscal impact on the revenues, but anyway, that's the recommendation from staff.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Mr. Whippy? This one seems pretty straightforward. Any comments from the public on 8B? No, seeing none, bring it back to council for discussion and or action. Seems pretty clear to me. I think staff is on this one, and the idea was before to get the grant, allow the public to apply, and we just need more time to make that happen. Alvin Smith?
I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to discuss it for the finance committee. It didn't get on the agenda, but my only question is, once that grant rolls out, how long would it take for the word to get out and people to apply? And then would we at this point say, okay, you have 30 days to get your act together and do it?
Yeah, so we will push out notices to our customers. We've also reached out to them and informed them of the council's decision to wait through June. We'll do mail flyers, inserts, and also the telephone calls to these customers to inform them about the program. And I forgot to mention that on the screen, we also have the CDBG assistance program of $500 that's still available. Staff is working with CDBG on increasing that to $1,000 because we still have a lot of funds still available that hasn't been used up, and that's the LEWAP grant that we're talking about. But those outreach efforts is what we plan to do on the website, social media, etc.
So, Isaac, would you think, what's your best guess for when we should revisit this?
We put in a 2-month period, just because the state has confirmed with us that they are remitting funds to the local agencies. It's through UKIA, North Coast Energy Services. And it's any day now, and also the process takes about 15 days from an application being submitted to be approved and transferred to the city. So our recommendation is just 2 months. You can certainly increase it, but that I think would be enough time to see how it goes. But again, it's based on the state grant.
So, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that we put it on the agenda for September, first meeting in September or something like that.
Well, ideally, we won't need to revisit this. Is that correct? Everything goes well and you're just asking for an extension because we've already voted to extend it. They're just asking for 2 more months. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so if the money doesn't show up and you need another extension, you'll come to us?
Absolutely.
Okay, otherwise it's business as usual.
That's right.
Okay.
With the proper noticing to the customers.
Okay. So, and you're just, Madam Clerk, this is not by resolution, this is just direction.
Direction to staff.
Okay. Is anyone here opposed to the extension?
No.
Councilman Peters? No?
No. In fact, I was happy to see on our agenda tonight, there are 2 different occasions where the city council has an opportunity to assist people financially rather than punish them. So this is the first one. So I have no objection whatsoever.
Okay. Mr. Whippy, I believe you have your direction.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on to 8C, Finance and Administration Committee recommendations on the establishment of Section 115 Trust with Public Agency Retirement Services PARS for the purpose of pre-funding the city's future unfunded liability with California Employees Retirement System. And again, Mr. Whippy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this item, before I dive into it, I just wanted to highlight some of the steps the city has taken, this council and previous council, to address our unfunded liability. The first is establishing a policy that 50% of any surplus would be paid towards our CalPERS UAL. We're also making annual UAL prepayments. We pay this in July and we save about 2% interest on that. And then adopting a pension policy. We adopted this in October of 2021, and then finally issuing pension obligated bonds, which we restructured the 7.5 million UAL with a lower interest rate at 3.5. This also brought our funding ratios to 95% from the 66% previously. CalPERS recognized a record 21.3% investment return in last fiscal year. That reduced our unfunded liability. Unfortunately, as I mentioned previously, it's at negative 8% in May, and that could end up between 5 to 8%, which will add new UAL to our books. Unfortunately, we've done a lot to address this issue, but whenever CalPERS has a bad year, agencies suffer like us. So this is another proactive step that we're recommending in addressing our UAL. And this graph here just shows our unfunded liability if CalPERS does end up having a negative 5%. In gray, those are the lease revenue bonds that we issued. The yellow line marks what we would be shaving off once we paid on that 3.5 million. The orange and the blue is the unfunded liability for our miscellaneous plan and safety. And as you can see, that has increased by $1 million just with a projected negative return. And if CalPERS has a better year in the future, that would reduce the UAL. But that's just kind of giving a snapshot into what our UAL would look like. And as I mentioned, it's very unfortunate that they continue to have a bad year. So the Section 115, participating in the trust program allows the city to reserve funds to help the city absorb impact of future economic volatility or additional CalPERS actuarial assumption changes. By continuing to responsibly plan for and fund pension obligation, the city helps to ensure the pension remains a sustainable employee benefit. So historically, Section 115 we used primarily for pre-funding OPEB, as I highlighted in my reserves presentation there. All of the OPEB pre-funding plans, including the one offered by CalPERS, are operated under the Section 115. So once employee assets are placed in the trust, assets can only be used for the designated purpose of pre-funding the pension bonds. So as I mentioned, there's some of the benefits. Assets in the trust will offset pension liabilities. It allows for greater investment flexibility versus risk diversification. We typically invest the city's funds in certificates of deposits, LAIF, which is through the state in bonds, but this would allow us to diversify some of that investment, but being conservative at the same time, ensuring we're conserving that principle. And then stabilizing rates to offset some of the unexpected increases with CalPERS. It's a rainy day fund, as I've mentioned previously, and we always have the flexibility to access funds at any time, and we can use those funds to pay for not only past year, but the current year employer costs that CalPERS has. So we conducted an RFP in April. We got two proposals back. One was from CalPERS the SEP program, CEPPT, and PARS, which is the Public Agency Retirement Services. The proposals were evaluated on the firm's experience providing Section 115 services to other municipalities and the previous performance history and costs. So based on those analyses, city staff, Mr. Spar and I selected PARS as the plan administrator. This is just a snapshot on their historic returns from a year to 10 years prior. PARS has 5 investment options to choose from. They're, conservative, less conservative, and more aggressive, where the investments are invested in stocks and bonds. So PARS is more than CalPERS in terms of cost. It's about 60 basis points. So to put in context, if you were to decide to approve this tonight, $1.1 million would be transferred to the trust, and annually the cost is 60 basis points, which is about $6,000 annually. And that's the fiscal impact. We have 750,000 in unassigned reserves. That's the surplus from fiscal year 2021. We budgeted for 350,000 in the current budget, so that's a total of 1.1 million. I do have Ryan from PARS, who's also on the call. They'll kind of talk about the different investment options and more background on PARS. Ryan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. All right. Thank you, Isaac. And if I can just share my screen. I have a short presentation that I can cover. Okay, so good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff. My name is Ryan Acasio. I'm a vice president with PARS. I'm joined this evening by Andrew Brown from Highmark Capital Management, who can speak on the investments. We're here to speak briefly with this short presentation, kind of an overview of the PARS program, as well as the investments and how this can help the city with funding for the, or I guess, as a rate stabilization program for the PERS liabilities. So contact information you can stop and ask anytime. So sort of the trust team, PARS serves as the trust administrator and consultant. US Bank is the trustee. Highmark is the investment manager. We do all the record keeping and making sure that the plan stays in compliance. US Bank is the trustee. They serve as the custodian of assets and safeguard the assets. So PARS does not handle any of the money. We just take direction and administer the program. And then investment management is done by Highmark Capital Management. Again, Andrew Brown can speak to the various investment options and the associated risk as we go through the presentation. Just a listing of clients that are participating in this pension rate stabilization program. So to date, we're over 270 plans or agencies, a mixture of cities, counties, special districts, school districts. So a wide variety of governmental agencies are using this as a budget tool to help address these volatility of the pension liabilities. If you look at the counties, Mendocino County is a recent adoptee of the program. So I think a lot of recognition by public agencies on the benefit of this 115 trust for addressing these liabilities. And just a quick background on the pension. So back in 2015, GASB 68 came out that required a disclosure of the net pension liability. So not only what your liabilities are, but also with regard to assets you have to address those. Prior to this and the establishment of these 115 trusts, sort of the only way to mitigate those increases was to send additional monies to CalPERS to kind of lower those liabilities. But you are sort of at the discretion of CalPERS and sort of the fluctuations with regard to their returns and any assumption changes that can affect what those contributions are. And that's sort of the genesis of this 115 trust, where assets can be put into a trust specifically for those liabilities, where the agency would locally control those assets. and help to offset those future rate increases. So sort of with regard to assumptions beyond your control, CalPERS has lowered their discount rate over the years. Years ago, it was at 7.5% and it went down to 7%, and now they're going to further reduce that to 6.8%, as well as shortening the amortization period. That simply puts additional pressure or increases on your contribution rates. So this is a way to sort of mitigate or stabilize those increases. I think it's sort of as Isaac mentioned, I will just sort of reiterate, the agency or the city would have local control over these assets. There's sort of no requirement to how much you put in or the frequency. That is strictly at your discretion. With regard to the risk tolerance level of the investments, fees on this do not start until assets are actually put in. At the end of the day, this 115 trust and the assets that are put in are for the specific liability of pension and addressing those pension rate stabilization increases that can potentially come from fluctuations, whether it's the market or assumption changes from CalPERS. At the end of the day, this is a rainy day fund because it's alleviating stress on your general fund. And again, this is something that you are locally controlling, and because it's in a 115 trust, you have the ability to put it into investments that could potentially earn a higher rate of return that isn't subject to the rules of your general fund with a mixture of equities. And you can kind of try to earn a higher rate of return than you would through the general fund, maybe at the same time taking less risk than CalPERS. And again, that's where you are locally controlling those assets. Number of advantages with funding with PARS. I think a number of these Isaac had covered. Maybe I just want to highlight a few items here. Again, PARS has over 270 clients, so we are the market pioneer and leader of this pension pre-funding, and we have true historical return information, over a 1, 3, 5, 10-year period that we can show you. And part of the unique feature of this is we have a combination trust where not only can you pre-fund for pension, but if you choose to do so, you could also do the same for OPEB. And then at the end of the day, we do have more flexibility with those investment options. As Isaac mentioned, there are 5 different options, both passive and active, so actually 10 that you can choose from. And as evidenced with this presentation, we will have a dedicated portfolio manager available at your use if you have any questions or issues that come up. So that's part of the service that PARS and Highmark provides with servicing this 115 trust. And it sort of, as I reiterate or just mentioned with the full service, that is something that PARS stresses. A dedicated senior consultant myself. We also have a client services coordinator that will help ensure that your satisfaction is met. If there are any issues that come up, we are always accessible. We try to meet on a regular periodic basis to review the performance of the investments as well as the administration. And as I mentioned, you do have a dedicated investment management team, with cell phone access and availability should you need that. Maybe with that, I can turn it over to Andrew Brown. He can speak briefly regarding the various investment options available to the city and sort of the corresponding risk. So, Andrew?
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. Good evening, Council. My name is Andrew Brown, and I am a Director of Investments and Portfolio Manager with Highmark Capital. I head up a team of 6 portfolio managers at Highmark who manage roughly about a little bit more than $3.5 billion for PARS within OPEB as well as pension pre-funding plans. My colleague Randy Yurchak has met with staff a couple times earlier in the month. He had a different obligation tonight, so he asked me to step in. So I'm happy to present. And as Ryan said briefly, but I'll stay as long as you want to answer any questions you might have. In listening to staff's brief overview prior to our presentation, I heard the word rainy day fund and I heard the word pension stabilization, or the words I should say. And so really, we have 2 types of clients that select this program. The first type of client would take a look at their funding ratio and say, geez, it's 70%, 72%, and we would like to see it at a higher clip So what we want to do is we want to dedicate a certain amount of cash flow on an annual basis, and we want you to aggressively grow these assets, Highmark. Sure, be cognizant of risk, but really we want to be in third gear, fourth gear in terms of the risk that we take with the assets that you're managing. And so when we hear those marching orders, we look at this page that we're looking at, and we think that the investment objectives maybe in the outer right-hand region of this exhibit, the balanced investment objective, the capital appreciation investment objective, something with 50, 60, 70, 80% or even more in stocks. Much more growth orientation, but much more risk. However, sometimes clients say rainy day fund and pension stabilization. And in those cases, we're thinking more along the lines of the bottom left-hand portion of this exhibit. The two investment objectives, one at the bottom left-hand called conservative. Conservative represents an asset allocation policy where I will position the portfolio between 5 and 20% in stocks, 60 to 95% in bonds. So the most aggressive position I can take with respect to stocks would be 20%. So because of modest equity allocation, we call it conservative. The next step up, if you will, is something we call moderately conservative, 20 to 40% equities, 50 to 80% bonds, and 0 to 20% in cash. Just because we call it conservative and just because we call it moderately conservative doesn't mean it's without risk. And certainly with the bond market sell-off this year, while the quarter's not over, year to date, not fiscal year, but just the first 6 months of this year, with the bond market down 11%, both of these strategies are down mid double digits, low double digits. Conservatives down about 11.5%, and moderately conservatives down about 13%. So don't necessarily be fooled by the name, but one might think that it could lend an opportunity to starting a plan, which really over the long term is a conservative investment objective that just has been severely hammered due to the rising interest rate environment that we've seen. So in summary, 5 investment objectives to select from, but I would maybe encourage council to think about maybe the 2 more conservative based on the staff report that I read from earlier this month and staff's earlier report this evening. Next page, please, Ryan. We offer 2 formats, platforms, if you will. One, if you notice the right-hand side of this page, at the top of the page, we describe index plus passive. One strategy that we utilize just uses index-based funds. So trying to invest in small cap, large cap, international, fixed income, but just using index-based products. And then in the middle of the page, we also have a platform that invests primarily in actively managed strategies, mutual funds predominantly, to try to outperform a certain market, to try to outperform a certain benchmark. So we have 2 strategies to offer the city with respect to any of the 5 investment objectives. Next page. Not that what the other folks are doing matters, but often we get the question, well, what are other people doing? And so with respect to pension pre-funding, the moderate strategy is 38% of our clients have selected the moderate strategy. We didn't really touch on that a second ago. That tends to be a 50-50 portfolio. And then I guess second place would be moderately conservative, the one that I did sort of nudge towards on the previous page. So somewhere between 50, 40, 30% in equities tends to be where the other clients that we work with have asked us to position their portfolios towards. Both of which would be, I would offer, considerably less volatile than what you would expect to see from a CalPERS-oriented portfolio. But they're designed to generate less return. So in fairness to CalPERS, that should be pointed out. The next slide really it goes back to Ryan, and I think he has some final thoughts, some summary thoughts. But if, well, you tell me, would you like for me to answer questions now or maybe after Ryan's completed?
After Ryan, please.
Yeah, it's just a wrap-up slide, again, touching on sort of the services of PARS. What we try to instill with our clients is the service that we provide, where you always have access to not only PARS, but also our investment management team, represented by Highmark with Andrew Brown and his group. And, with the 115 Trust, this is something that the services we provide is part of our core business. We're the market pioneers with this 115 Trust with over, approximately 270 with clients. We have the IRS letter of IRS approved 115 Trust, the approval letter for additional protection to the city, where the 115 Trust has been reviewed and blessed by the IRS for setting aside these assets, and any income derived from that would be tax exempt. And then I think a lot of the subsequent numbers are what Isaac and I have sort of iterated with regards to the benefits of working with PARS. So I think with that sort of concludes our presentation. I tried to keep it short and sweet, but again, I'm available for questions as well as Andrew. So I can turn it over to the questions now.
Thank you for that. Any questions from council? Councilmember Alvin Smith?
I have a question after hers.
I have a question for Isaac. So, and thank you for bringing this back. Finance Committee had a chance to look at this already. So, as I understand it, we need a surplus of operating in order to invest this money. And so my question is, do we have a surplus of operating?
So we have 750,000 from prior year surplus. And in the 21-22 budget, we had, Tabitha had built in 350,000 to be contributed to the 115 Trust. In addition to that, the budget that you just adopted has 200,000 that we've dedicated to CalPERS as well. But yes, the policy is 50%. In terms of the surplus, we don't have those numbers for you yet. If we have a surplus in 21-22.
That's what I'm looking for.
We'll have that in the first quarter of next fiscal year.
So if we don't have a surplus, this is just moot. But
if we don't have a surplus, we would still contribute the amount that we've budgeted for. So for next year, it's the 200,000. The surplus is in addition to those annual contributions that we've budgeted for.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, gentlemen out there in Zoom land. I appreciate it. I know that we are asked tonight to, in resolution form, create a Section 115 trust. My confusion is, do we also then give direction for the platform? We heard conservative, moderately conservative, and so does that, I didn't see it in the resolution, maybe I missed it. I'm confused by that.
Sure, yes, Councilman. So tonight is just the approval of establishing the trust. We do plan to bring that forward to the Finance and Admin Committee on the different investment strategies, and also what are our goals, right? We want to make sure we're fully funded in the next few years, and to be able to take care of those increases in CalPERS employer costs. And also, it's an insurance policy against CalPERS. More importantly, we keep giving them money, and they continue to do bad investments. So this is diversifying that investment strategy. But to your question, yes, we will bring that forward to the Finance and Admin Committee meeting, have that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm comfortable with what I heard. Thank you very much.
Okay, no more questions. Public? 8C, Madam Clerk, if you'd open up the 8C to the public. Anyone in the room? No? Seeing none? Sure. Okay, so we'll bring it back to council for discussion and or action. And first of all, I believe Mr. Spar has a comment.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We've we've looked at strategies on how to build a smarter city and increase or protect your finances. The first was the pension obligation bonds that I brought forward to your previous city manager. And we needed that to create a savings with CalPERS. And instead of a 7% cost, we got that down to a 3.5, and that was a 4% savings. This is another financial asset program. Currently, you're placing your funds in a certificate of deposit that earns 1.5%. It could maybe go up to 3% in return, where it could be for pension protection. When you have reserves, you want your reserves protected. But if you could have those reserves earn and work for you, it would be even better. And most small cities don't have access to those programs. So CalPERS has created a program using their money and your money to make CalPERS more profitable. And 20 years ago, it was fantastic. They bailed us out in Sacramento on 2 downtown businesses, saved our redevelopment agency. Today, I wouldn't call them underperforming. They just don't perform to expectations. And when we reviewed the alternatives out there and we worked with PARS on a 115, they met expectations. Then the next question was, how secure are they? They met security expectations. Then the third question was, how can we make investments and make choices? Well, we work with your council members. They make the selection on conservative or moderate or aggressive. And they can change that. And it can change from committee meeting to committee meeting. And they bring that back to city council, where city council also partakes in that decision of investing the city's revenue. We think CalPERS could dip down and we would have to pull reserves. Rather than pull the reserves from the general fund, we would like to have a 115 account where we have growing reserves or protected reserves that can be used, that is your choice, not staff's choice, not the bank's choice, but your choice. So today, it's taken Isaac several months and the team here you have, Ryan and Andrew, to present this to you, but I think they've done an admirable job of clearly outlining some options for your city to consider. And I would consider it tonight, if you may. Thank you.
Okay, Alvin Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to say that I am so grateful David had come to our lives here in the city and has helped us solve the first problem, which was our unfunded pension liability for the future by helping us figure out that we should borrow money at a lower interest rate than PERS was charging. And that was a big thing. When I was running, I was just scared to death that we're just going to go in the red, so far millions of dollars. And now he has brought to us this other idea. And I know I've heard my fellow city councils say that they don't like gambling. But we are gambling with CalPERS. I have to say, we're stuck with them. We have to use them. And they're gambling with our money not very well. So I have to really, I would like to encourage, Marcia and I have talked about this a little bit on the finance. I'd like to encourage our city council to take a step forward on this and really, there's so many communities that are taking advantage of this. I think it's pretty safe. So that's my 2 cents.
I think, in all fairness to our former city manager too, Tabitha Miller brought this idea to me in one of our meetings one time. I don't know if we talked about it at Finance and Ad, but we never crossed the goal line. So here's our chance tonight to cross the goal line, and our thanks to our current interim city manager, Dave Spar, for helping us, maybe throwing a 20-yard pass to help us downfield a little bit.
Please, no, it wasn't me. It was Isaac who brought this to my attention and gave me the past history and where Tabitha was going with this. And Isaac thoroughly vetted it out.
Okay.
And then brought it forward to finance and admin. I'm 100% in support of backing Isaac on a very wise decision and a good program.
Okay. Well, then credit to Isaac as well. Thank you, Isaac.
Okay, anyone else? Vice Mayor?
This sounds like a prudent step and I'm all for it. Simple.
Okay, I agree. And you did say the level of investment was going to come back to finance and admin, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
And this is just the establishment of the account.
Correct, yes.
Okay, and two resolutions, Madam Clerk. I have one of the Fort Bragg City Council, one of the Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District. Is that correct? Same one? Just a joint.
Yeah, it's just one motion, 1 second for a joint.
Okay, so if there's no more discussion, we will entertain a motion to adopt resolution of the Fort Bragg City Council and and the Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District Board approving the agreement with Public Agency Retirement Services Powers to establish a Section 115 trust and authorizing the city manager to execute the contract.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, you're first and second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, if you could take roll, please.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Heffernan,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes. Okay, and it is 8:07, so before we move on to 8D, we will take a 10-minute break. Yes, Ryan, Andrew, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate the presentation and your contribution to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
6:20, and we will reconvene, bring us to 8D, receive report and recommendation from Finance and Admin Committee, and consider adoption of Joint City Council Municipal Improvement District Resolution temporarily waiving water and wastewater capacity fees for all businesses in the Central Business District for a 3-year period. Mr. Spar.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, members of the Finance and Admin Committee, Dave Spar, Interim City Manager. This item on fee waiver came to me 6 months ago, working with businesses in the downtown area. Staff and myself, I was a little bit confused. Some people would call it a waiver, some people call it a deferral. Every time we got the water, wastewater capacity fees calculated for a business coming into the Central Business District, it was a deferral and not a waiver. So when we looked at the ordinance, it started out as a waiver, and council didn't have time to pass the item at one of their meetings. They adjourned. It came back on consent, and it came back as a deferral, partially because there wasn't a revenue source identified for the repayment of those funds. So I looked at reissuing the waiver for a period of 3 years until the June 30th, 2025. And the waiver would be for the capacity fee in the Central Business District. And the repayment would be from the actual capital improvement account, because it has the funds in there to cover it, but also from new revenue generated in the Central Business District from both property tax and sales tax from the new businesses that would locate in the Central Business District. We had a public comment from Paul Clark, a realtor and board member of the Mendocino Association of Realtors. His concern was the same concern shared with me from Councilmember Peters. And that concern was there are restaurants outside the Central Business District that have paid a capacity fee. The restaurant has left, moved on, or there's a change of use. Why would the city want to charge a second capacity fee for that restaurant or for that location? And I said this city would not. Once that one fee is paid for the capacity, it's covered. We don't need to double dip or charge another fee. There should be a record for that. So staff, one of them being Chantel O'Neill, went into Springbook, put a timer in there for the year 2025 and put notes in there that could be triggered, so we can actually use one of our existing system software to track the capacity fee and the payments and the permits and the timelines and the alarms and the resets and the repayments if necessary. So now we have a system that's fully functionable. Staff is pitching in to help make it work. And I amended, actually I should thank Sarah McCormick for amending this and rewriting it to help include citywide restaurants. But in the Central Business District, we don't exclude it just to restaurants. We include all businesses in the Central Business District, which also I think is the partial intent, is to fill the vacancies downtown. So this capacity fee waiver would be repaid from the account if there is a need for capital improvements. The account has the existing funds in it. That account will be repaid by the general fund over a period of 10 years. I think the repayment of maybe approximately $120,000 could be repaid in as little as 5 years from the location of new and expanding businesses in the Central Business District. 10 years just gives you enough window to collect those fees and make sure that that account is properly supplied. If you have any questions or concerns, I would like to take those now and hope that I can address them.
Councilmember Peters?
I think we should probably point out that at any time, I believe, the city council, through council action, can waive fees for certain things. And we actually did this for the Overtime Brewery, if I'm not mistaken. Were you there, Bernie, on that council? So this goes, sorry, it goes back a few years again, but if anyone has a problem with fees, just so they know, we can, as a council, take action. But this isn't something individual. This is actually policy that we're now creating. And as you said, with a mechanism to actually track it and hopefully get a return on waiving these fees, because we anticipate, as you mentioned, the increased tax revenue will certainly hopefully offset that. And if they've already been paid once, why pay them twice? So it makes total sense to me. And I just thank you for acknowledging that you and I had discussed this, because there is a project, and I'm not going to get into anything, but there's a very good potential project that I think will definitely check all the boxes on this, and this will really help them. And in other cases, like Overtime Brewery, it almost was a difference whether they opened the doors or not, because that was an unanticipated fee that they found out about late in the game financially, and it was very difficult. They came to us, and we listened to them, and we waived that fee. So we're kind of following something we've already done for somebody, so let's do it again for everybody.
Questions, Alvin Smith?
So I was reading the resolution here and I didn't see anything about the ability, or except if you've already had one before or whatever you would put in there. Does that need to be in this resolution?
If you would like to amend the resolution so it is spelled out, you can do that. It doesn't need to be in there. Staff knows how to apply this. And as Councilmember Peters had pointed out, any business can request council look at the fee. It must pass a test of being a public benefit.
Okay, well this is only addressing the city central business district. So I don't see it needed to be in this one, but when you write the one for the whole city, I would love to see that included in the language. Just to encourage people to ask.
Okay, any other questions before we go to public? Anybody from the public like to speak on 8D?
Hi, this is Jacob Patterson. I think Dave already answered this because it was my question, had to do with the distinction between a temporary waiver and the deferral. That was something that bothered me before. I thought it was supposed to be a waiver, and then when I went back and reviewed it, it was a deferral. But you talked about repayment, and I think that's just between our internal funds, right? So I just want clarity that the businesses that are getting their fees waived, this is a permanent waiver for them, and they will never have to pay it to anyone, because I want to ensure that that is the case. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone online?
No hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Back to council for discussion and or action. Seems like a pretty good policy here. I think it's well
if there's
overdue.
no discussion, I'll make a motion. We can discuss the motion.
Absolutely.
Okay, I make a motion resolution of the Fort Bragg City Council and a resolution of the Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District Board temporarily waiving water and sewer capacity fees for business locating in the Central Business District for a 3-year period.
I second that.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Again, this is to encourage businesses to move into the downtown. Vice Mayor.
I would just like to thank both Mr. Spar and Ms. McCormick for bringing this back to us and making the adjustments you did. I'm really happy with where it landed, and I think it's, for years we've talked about how to be business friendly, and I think right here we're actually accomplishing it for once. So thank you.
Here, here. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could take roll, please.
Alvin Smith?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Marcel Hay?
Yes.
Raffanan?
Yes.
Norvell?
Yes. Okay, it is 8:29. We will close the open portion of the meeting and reconvene into closed in 2 minutes.